Hi, and welcome to this week's Auspicious Agile video blog. This is John Okoro. This week we're going to talk about the SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, Agile Portfolio Level, and particularly the CapEx and OpEx. There was a recent article that was released by SAFe and Dean Leffingwell on the topic of CapEx and OpEx, and we're going to take a look at it here from a practitioner's perspective and give a little bit of color as well as hopefully helping to make this topic more understandable for our viewers. So let's get into the topic. The first question that probably comes to mind for you is, why should I care about CapEx and OpEx? And it's an accounting and a finance topic, and really not really relevant to me as an Agile or SAFe practitioner. But if we look at this, usually as a practitioner, you are going to encounter almost certainly executives in finance and accounting, the people who are going to provide and fund and sponsor your project or your initiative and your SAFe initiative. In order to be able to do that, you need to be able to speak in these terms, in terms of CapEx and OpEx, so that they understand what you're doing and they are willing to fund and support you. So if you're not able to do that, the likelihood is that the money is going to go to something that they do understand, which might be a traditional project done in a traditional waterfall way because they understand how to account for it. So if we want to be able to be supported for doing our SAFe programs, our Agile programs, and being able to run those arts, we need to be able to speak in this language. So with that said, let's take a little bit more of a look at what CapEx and OpEx are. So these are accounting and finance terms. They both apply to accounting and finance in most parts of the world, but there might be some slight differences, but generally the same principles. And in addition, there are also taxation aspects associated as well. Now, my background, in addition to technology, I also have a degree in business and in law. So these are areas I'm interested in, and I encounter a lot in the workplace and in the market. So as we take a look here, a traditional project would run in a way that when you are doing the requirements and design, it would be something called OpEx, so it's not capitalizable. And then when you're doing build and test, you're actually building the asset, as you call it. It is capitalizable, so that's what we call CapEx. And then when you move it to maintain, it is, again, operational expense because you're no longer building an asset for the organization. So basically, you have phase gates in traditional, where once the management has decided to fund it, it goes into CapEx, and when you go live, it goes into OpEx. Now, in SAFe and in Agile, this distinction is not so clear. We don't get a clear that, well, as we've phase gates, because we don't have phase gates. So instead, what the article from SAFe and Leffingwell talks about is that we have features, and those features are potentially capitalizable or CapEx, where our OpEx is things like our enablers and SAFe or different research items we might have, infrastructure, exploration, defects, etc., which would be OpEx. So the formula looks something like this. Potential CapEx dollars would be equal to either the number of stories over total stories, number of points over total points, or number of hours over total hours, and then we multiply that by the total spend or the total dollars that we have spent for the overall period. And that will give us our potential CapEx dollars, which is what the executives, finance, and accounting are going to care about. And they're going to have, again, accounting, finance, tax implications on the organization. So let's take a look in some more detail at each one of these. In terms of counting stories, what we're going to see is we have our abacus here, but we're actually just counting the number of stories that we have. It's probably the simplest approach, and it's the least burdensome approach, and very easy just to count what stories we have. Now, if we start counting story points, still not too bad. Usually we do points estimating, and we have that. However, there's a caveat that is noted in the article, and also I want to note here, Kanban teams often don't estimate up front, and they often don't do point estimating, so you'll have to account for that if you're going to try and use this approach. Now, counting hours is probably the most burdensome of the three. If you go and you need to track hours, you need to track everybody's hours down to each story level. In fact, stories are usually tasked out, and the tasks are usually the ones that get the hours, even though the article does indicate you don't need to do that. You can just assign the hours to the stories. But there's a lot of work that's going to occur here. A lot of people don't enter their hours in the timekeeping software. They don't track it properly, and it's going to be a lot of additional work, at least in my opinion, from working with many different teams. So these are the three approaches that we have. Counting stories is certainly the easiest of them. Those are acceptable to your accounting and finance. Now let's take a look at the tools. So Agile ALM Tool support is also very important. You're certainly not going to use an Abacus or even an Excel spreadsheet to do this. Instead, you are going to have points and hours and SAFe levels that you need to make sure you're able to support. And to do that, you need good Agile ALM tools to do it. You also need to be able to take into account the hierarchy. You need to understand what's in a feature, and those features are going to break down into stories. The stories will break down into tasks, and you need to be able to track that hierarchy and know which stories belong to which features and which tasks belong to which stories so that you can give it proper accounting and CapEx or OpEx treatment. If you don't have a tool that really fully supports SAFe, it's going to become very difficult for you to do this because you're going to have not full support for that hierarchy or structure. And there certainly are tools in the market that do not support SAFe fully. And if they don't do that, it's going to make it much more difficult for you to be able to properly treat this. And you definitely want proper treatment of the accounting and the CapEx and OpEx aspects of your SAFe program and of your art. So make sure that the tool that you're using is supporting SAFe. So these are some of the considerations and also some thoughts around the recent article on the portfolio level and CapEx and OpEx treatment. Very important topic because you have to be able to speak to the people who are going to provide the money, have to be able to give the answers that are going to be necessary for taxes and accounting, and hopefully this helps and gives a clear picture. So until next time, stay agile, and thanks for listening.